received, right? Okay. Alright, my name is JT, and I'll be refuting Orusiak's speech. Her main claim was that abortion has a negative impact on women's health. Her first claim is that abortion is widely thought of as beneficial to women. Using the word beneficial makes it sound like a vitamin. If you do it, it will be good for you. I think that we can all agree, and we all know, that abortion does not have beneficial consequences. My refutation speak will focus on how it does not have negative impacts and how the facts in her speech are not conducive to proving the point that it is negative. The first point is that 5 out of her 6 cited sources are from 1971 to 1987. We can all agree that medicine has changed a lot since the 70s and 80s. One of those main changes is the fact that the abortion pill was created. The FDA started testing and approving the abortion pill September of 2000. Those went through, and the abortion pill is estimated to be used for 90% of abortions, which are in the first trimester. The CDC reports that 91.4% of abortions in 2012 were performed at or at less than 13 weeks, which is the first trimester. Of those, 65.8% were performed at or less than the 8th week. 20.8% of all abortions were qualified as early medical abortions, meaning that they were used with the pill. The pill has had major success with eliminating a lot of risks that have happened regarding abortion, which in the 70s and 80s, which most of these statistics were used, it was all orthoscopic, where they would actually have to go in and terminate the fetus. The second claim is that she makes is that breast cancer is a result of the loss of breast cancer. You have an added risk of breast cancer after an abortion, which in fact is completely wrong. The American Cancer Association has concluded that there's no scientific evidence to support the claim that abortion increases risk of breast cancer, and actually, on the contrary, that if you carry a baby for full term, it increases the risk of breast cancer. One of the third claims she makes is that in one study of 500 aborted women, researchers found that 50% expressed negative feelings and up to 10% were classified as having developed serious psychiatric complications. And in a study of post-abortion patients, only 8 weeks after their abortion, researchers found that 44% complained of nervous disorders, 36% had experienced sleep disturbances, 31% had regrets about their decision, and 11% had prescribed psychiatric medicine by a family doctor. And in a 2010 study by JAMA Psychiatry that was published in the U.S. National Library of Medicine, 3 sites of abortion of first-time trimesters of unintended pregnancies were randomly approached to participate in a longitudinal study with 4 assessments: 1 hour before the abortion, 1 hour after, 1 month after, and 2 years after the abortion. 882, which is 85% of the 1,043 eligible women were approached, and 442, which is 50%, of 882 were followed for the full 2 years. In this 2010 study, which is much more recent, 2 years after post-abortion, 301 of 418 women, which is 72%, were satisfied with their decision. 306 out of 441, which is 69%, said they would have the abortion again. 31.5 out of 315 out of 440, which is 72%, reported more benefit than harm from their abortion, and 308 of 386 were not depressed. Only 6 out of 442, which is 1%, reported post-traumatic stress disorder. We can all agree the 70s and 80s were a different time, and the statistics and the facts that were brought up in this speech are not conducive to reporting and proving that abortion has a negative impact on women's health. you want to use this one, I kind of have a few markings on this because
I've got one, right?
yeah, but this one has a little bit more like what I actually spoke about. Kind of. I just think this one has a
Does it have the bibliography the way it's supposed to be formatted?
with the
There
annotation.
you go. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, whatever you
Okay. Yeah. Then.
I'll take whichever one you want to
No,
give
no,
me.
then
I don't
that's
care.
fine.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. All right, well, you identify the proposition, and then there's kind of an explanation of an argument that, I thought you were going off on a different tangent. It's not really a preview of what the advocate's arguments were. It's just, kind of a discussion of what the benefits might be or how we measure those sorts of things. I think that does come up a little bit later in the argument, but it was confusing when it's signposted as the first point because you actually do have a different first point. When you got to the analysis on that first point, you're presenting evidence as opposed to a claim. The claim is that the evidence that the advocate is using is old. And then your evidence to support that is 5 out of 6 of the sources that were cited came from 1971 to 1987, and that is old data. It's outdated given the changes that have occurred. So you do want to phrase your contradictory claim as a claim. Don't present evidence as the claim. Present the claim and then use the evidence to support that particular point. I thought you had a good explanation about some of the technical changes that have occurred. The use of chemically induced abortions, for instance, seems to mitigate some of the issues that might be talked about. I'm not sure if it would mitigate all of those issues. The number that are medically, or I should say chemically induced, still seems to be relatively small in proportion, and so I'm not sure that you've reduced it entirely, but you've suggested that a substantial part is, basically not noticeable because of the procedure that's being used. It's not an invasive procedure. So I guess the argument here is that without that invasive procedure, you're unlikely to have the negative consequences that the advocate is talking about. It would be nice if you had some data talking about not only the success rate, but some of those emotional issues, especially with the technological innovation of the medically induced abortions, or excuse me, the chemically induced abortions. The breast cancer argument was the clearest argument that you had. You have a direct contradiction. You have evidence that reaches the opposite conclusion of what the advocate's talking about. What we do need to have, I think, a little bit more of is a contrast between the evidence that you're presenting and the evidence that the advocate's presenting. Is the evidence that the advocate's presenting some of that old information and the American Cancer Association information is more recent? Have they assumed the research that was being cited by the advocate and now they are dismissing it? Or is it based on another study? But that was the most clear and direct contradiction of the position that the advocate's taking. Although I did think that you had a pretty good response on the third point also. You're diminishing the claim. You're not denying that some people might have a negative reaction to the abortion that they have, but you do kind of put it into a context about it being relatively small. There's a lot of summary of what the advocate's statistics were, and then you've got new statistics that you're contrasting to it, although it gets a little bit confusing because they're using actually a statistic, percentages, and you just give us the raw numbers out, and that's a little bit confusing. I'm not sure if that's a direct quote or if it's your summary of the data that's being presented there. But the clearest argument that says that only 6 had post-traumatic stress disorders that was related to their abortion, so you've diminished that argument to a substantial degree, and I thought that was a pretty effective response there. All right, thank you.